Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for our Monday Healing Step session here on the Bridge to Healing community. Now, if you're new here or watching for the first time, I'm Janine Naus, your grief and trauma relief specialist, and I help trauma survivors reconnect with themselves, expand their awareness, and find peace even in a world that can feel unpredictable, chaotic, or even heavy. Now, my work blends personal experience, professional training, and years of supporting people just like you in moving from survival to deeper connection and freedom. Now, if you're catching the replay, type pound replay, and in the comments, you can do that too. And if you're joining me live, say hello and type pound live. And I'd love to know where you're joining me from. So today I want to talk about something that has been on my heart, a perspective from Moji that I believe goes right to the core of healing, especially when we lived with trauma. Now, he said the most effective way to transcend cultural limitations is to go back to a place of awareness. And rather than focusing on being universal, instead discover awareness itself. Then you will automatically be in your universality, and no longer will you be crippled by any kind of conditioning. Now, this is so profound because it speaks to something I've witnessed over and over in my clients. So, also in my loved ones and also in myself. And we're often shaped and sometimes limited by the conditioning we've absorbed from the world around us. And when you layer trauma on top of that conditioning, the effects can be even more constraining. I think of someone close to me who has been adopted, and from the outside, their life looked good, safe, cared for, but inside, the complexities of identity, belonging, and silent questions about who am I shaped every relationship. See, people around them didn't always see or understand the inner navigation they had to do every single day. And that's the hidden weight conditioning and trauma can carry together. So today we're going to explore how conditioning and trauma work together to limit your awareness and sense of self, and then why returning to awareness, not just self-improvement, is the key to freedom. And then finally, gentle ways to reconnect to your awareness and live from it in a challenging world. So let's begin by acknowledging something we all share. None of us arrive in this world as a blank slate. From the moment we are born, we are absorbing. We're taking in messages about who we are allowed to be, how we should act, what's acceptable, and what's not. And these messages come from our families, our communities, our culture, and even the subtle cues in the environments we grow up in. And for many people, this conditioning can feel so natural, so woven into daily life that it's invisible. It's just how things are. But conditioning is not neutral. It sets the parameters for what we believe is possible for us, often without our conscious awareness. Now, when trauma enters the picture, especially early in life, the effects of conditioning don't just shape you, they can confine you. Trauma imprints itself on the nervous system, and it teaches you that safety means predictability, and predictability means staying inside the boundaries you've learned, even if those boundaries are painfully limiting. Now, it's like building a small room inside a larger house. The house is your life, full of potential, experiences, and choices. But because of conditioning and trauma, you stay in the same room. You know every corner. You can predict what will happen there. And even though the door to the rest of the house is unlocked, you may not feel safe enough to open it. I've seen this over and over in my work with trauma survivors. People mistake these learned limitations for personality traits. And they'll say, I'm just not the type of person who speaks up. Or I'm not creative. Or I'm bad at relationships. But when we look deeper, these aren't innate truths. They are adaptive strategies born out of necessity. They kept you safe when you didn't have other choices. And because they've been reinforced by both your early environment and your own survival instincts, they can feel permanent. Now, here's the thing. Just because something feels like part of your identity does not mean it's the truth of who you are. These patterns are familiar, yes, but familiar is not the same as free. And this brings us to the heart of why awareness is so powerful. Because awareness is the part of you that has never been conditioned, never been harmed, and never been reduced by trauma. When you return to awareness, you can finally see these patterns for what they are, something you learn, not something you are. And that leads us into our next point, how awareness itself becomes the doorway out of these limitations and why it's the most powerful starting place for true healing. Now, when we talk about awareness, we're not talking about a mental checklist of your habits or a quick inventory of what's wrong with you. This isn't self-criticism disguised as self-awareness. Awareness is the context, in this context, is different. It's the part of you that can observe without judgment. The quiet space inside that notices your thoughts, your body signals, your emotions, and doesn't rush to label them as good or bad. So, why is this so important? Because trauma and conditioning keep you identified with your patterns. They convince you this is just who I am. But awareness allows you to step back and see these patterns are not you. They are learned responses, and like anything learned, they can be unlearned or transformed. So think of awareness like opening a window in a room that's been closed up for years. The air inside is stagnant, heavy. You might even forget what fresh air smells like. But once the window opens, there's movement, there's possibility. That's what awareness does for your inner world. It lets something new in. And when you return to awareness, you create a space between what's happening and how you respond. And this space is where freedom lives. It's where you get to ask, do I want to keep living by this old story? Or what would happen if I chose something different this time? Now, I want to be clear about something here. This isn't about bypassing your pain or preventing your history or pretending that your history doesn't matter. It's about seeing clearly that your history doesn't have to dictate your present. And here's the beautiful part. Once you recognize that awareness itself has never been conditioned, harmed, or limited, you begin to feel a sense of safety in it. Awareness becomes your anchor, not the old cultural rules, not the survival patterns, awareness itself. And from there, change is no longer about forcing yourself to fix something. It's about coming home to the truth that you are already more than what you've been taught to believe. And this brings us to our next point. What happens when you start making choices from awareness rather than from the old conditioning and how that shifts your entire sense of self and possibility? When you begin to live from awareness instead of the conditioning you've carried for years, maybe even decades, something profound starts to happen. Your choices become less about avoiding fear or pleasing others and more about alignment with your deeper truth. You stop moving through life on autopilot repeating patterns that were never truly yours to begin with. And from this space, relationships shift. Boundaries become easier to hold, not because you've memorized a list of rules, but because you can feel in real time what supports your well being and what doesn't. Work, family, and daily interactions take on a different tone because you're no longer letting the old script, one written by cultural expectations and trauma, decide your every move. And perhaps most importantly, you start to experience an inner steadiness when the world feels chaotic, even when people don't understand your choices. You have an anchor. That anchor is awareness, steady, safe, and unshaken by the ups and downs outside of you. Living from this place is not about being perfect or getting it right every time. It's about catching yourself with compassion and noticing when you slip back into old patterns and choosing again. Every time you return to awareness, you reclaim a little more of yourself. So there's one simple but powerful way to begin living from awareness, and it's something I call the awareness pause. The next time you feel pulled into a familiar reaction, whether it's people pleasing, shutting down, over explaining, or bracing for someone's response, pause, take one slow breath, and ask yourself, am I choosing this from conditioning or from awareness? You don't have to judge the answer, just notice. That noticing is the beginning of change. And over time, this pause strengthens your connection to awareness, and decisions start coming from the truth of who you are, not the habits that were passed down to you. Now, I want to leave you with a question you can explore in your own time, and I'll say it twice so you can write it down. Where in my life am I still acting from old conditioning, and what would change if I responded from awareness instead? Now, let me repeat that for you. Where in my life am I still acting from old conditioning, and what would change if I responded from awareness instead? So, as we wrap up today's conversation, I want you to remember this. Awareness is not something you have to earn, fix, or create. It has always been within you. The work is simply to return to it again and again with gentleness. You've survived experiences, patterns, and cultural conditioning that may have tried to shrink your sense of self. But every moment you pause, notice, and choose awareness over automatic reaction, you are reclaiming yourself. And that's powerful. So if this message has resonated with you, I want to invite you to take the next step in a safe, supportive way. I offered the Healing Connection, it's a no-fee clarity call. It's a 30-minute space just for you. And in this call, you'll have the chance to share what's been on your heart, receive one personalized insight for your own healing right now, and explore one small, compassionate step forward. So this is not about pressure. It's about saying yes to giving yourself the time, attention, and care you truly deserve. The link to schedule your call is in the comments below this video. So if you've been feeling the pull to go deeper, this is your moment to answer it. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you there. And I'll see you in our next Monday Healing Step session. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Have a great day. Bye-bye.